Hello and welcome to the third episode of the Green Bean podcast. My name's Katie and this is my best friend Jack, and we're really glad that you've come along to join us for another episode. I want to start this episode by saying a huge thank you to everybody who's watched the first or the second episode or both, and especially a big thank you to all the people who've left so many kind and encouraging comments or who've shared the podcast on Instagram or on their own podcast. I'm really, really grateful to hear such nice thoughts about my format and about the work that I've been doing, and I'm really glad that you're enjoying it. I'm certainly enjoying the process of putting the podcast together. It's definitely a learning curve for me, but I'm really pleased to hear that you're enjoying watching it as well. So thank you again, and hopefully there'll be lots more episodes for you to enjoy over the next few months. I'm continuing work on the comic that I was working on in the last episode. For those of you who don't know, it's a short comic about collecting shells on the beach, which is going to be for my zine. Don't get excited, the zine isn't really anywhere close to coming yet. It's going to be a few more months. I've got a lot more things that I want to work on, but yeah, the theme of this issue is going to be about beachcombing and wildlife, seashore wildlife, birds, plants, seashells, that kind of thing. So I really wanted to have a story in there that expresses my love of going to the beach, and there's lots that I want to capture in that respect in terms of my childhood, which I'm covering on this page, and getting into my adulthood, which will be on the following page. As a kid, was always happy to spend hours trawling over beaches looking at shells. Some of my family is from South Africa, so we spent quite a bit of time over there, and also on beaches in Cornwall in the UK. So I really wanted to capture that childhood feeling of being completely lost in time. You know, when you're so absorbed in what you're doing, you don't have a sense of time passing. You're just in the moment and really taking in your surroundings. So that's the kind of feeling that I'm trying to capture with this comic, is that enthrallment that I had as a kid with seashells and wildlife, and how that has not really gone away as I've grown up. There was a moment when I was thinking about not recording a podcast today because I was feeling like well, I'm working on the same knitting project as last time, I'm working on the same drawing project as last time, maybe it's boring if I show you the same projects. And then I thought about, why I wanted to make a podcast, and what's important to me about what I'm sharing is that I'm really honest. I don't ever want this to become another thing where I put pressure on myself to feel like I have to show you something new and something exciting, and certainly I don't want to be feeling a pressure to feel like I have to finish something to show it on the podcast. So it's really important to me that this podcast stays honest and is a reflection of things that I've actually been working on in the time since the last episode, not forcing myself because I feel like I have to do something in order to share it, but these are the things that I'm working on, and this is the pace that I'm working on them at. I really want to accurately reflect how long it takes to do a piece of drawing or do a piece of knitting, and when it comes to it, I'll also talk about the things that go wrong, the things that I change my mind about, because I change my mind a lot. And so I decided to record an episode that was talking about the same projects as last time, because it felt important to share that I'm still working on the same things. Most of my creative projects are long-term investments that take me longer than a couple of weeks, so you're likely to see them many more times again before you see any finished objects. I'm just starting work on the final panel here, and I'm not actually happy with the way that I've sketched it out, so I'm gonna rub it out and start again. What you haven't seen is that this is about the 5th time that I've rubbed this panel out and started again, but sometimes it just goes like that. Hopefully this time will be better. No, it won't. Let's try again. I'm still knitting away on my Humulus jumper, which I introduced to you in the last episode. For those of you who don't know, I'll do a quick recap. It's a design by Isabel Kramer. It's a top-down colourwork jumper, and I'm knitting it with Garth & Orr organic double knitting yarn in 2 different undyed sheepy blends. The dark colour, which is the main colour, is a blend of Hebridean and Manx wool, and the pale contrast colour is a blend of Manx and Chlen. And since the previous episode, I finished the yoke, which you can see, and I separated for the body and sleeves. So I'm onto the straight stocking stitch relaxation part of the project, which I'm obviously really enjoying. It's now the kind of project that I can take with me if I'm travelling, or take to my knitting group and still have a conversation, or watch TV, which is really nice. Those of you who have knitted this kind of project before might spot something weird going on here, and that is the fact that I'm purling, which you wouldn't normally do for a all knitted, all in the round top-down colourwork jumper. Why would you purl when you have a choice? It's the question I hear you crying, and this is the bit where I confess that I'm a bit weird, and I enjoy purling as much, if not more, than knitting, and whenever I have the choice, I will choose to knit flat rather than knit in the round. And I know that makes me a bit unusual. I think probably the majority of knitters prefer to knit things seamlessly and not have any finishing to do, but I really enjoy the variety and the rhythm of doing a row of knit stitches and then a row of purl stitches. I find that the change of giving my hands something different to do helps me avoid any repetitive strain injury, which I do suffer from a bit because of drawing. So it helps to have a different movement to do every other row. And also I just find it unwieldy knitting garments in the round, particularly sleeves. When it comes to the sleeves, if you're doing either the magic loop technique or wrestling with double pointed needles, I just find it fiddly and a pain, and I hate shoving those stitches around the secular needles. I would much rather knit something flat, so that's what I'm doing. When I reached the bottom of the yoke, which obviously I knitted in the round, I separated the sleeves from the body and put the sleeves and the front of the body and the back of the body on separate pieces of waste yarn to hold the stitches, and now I'm working on the back of the body on its own, flat, when I'll do the front after that. And then the sleeves I will probably knit 2 at a time, just because I don't like having to keep track and count when I do my decreases and try and do it in the same way on the second sleeve. It makes more sense to me to do them both at once, and then you don't have to have a little scrap of notepaper hanging around that you can't lose. But I'm aware that this makes me a bit of an odd one, that I would rather knit my circular yoke jumper flat than in the round, but there you go. Seeing as my knitting isn't the most exciting project, I thought I would talk a little bit about what I'm wearing, which is one of my favourite knitting projects from last year. It's the Palmetto cardigan, which is a design by Amelia Jensen from Pom Pom magazine, issue 22, which was the autumn issue last year, 2017. And I really fell in love with this cardigan as soon as I saw it. I'm a sucker for fitted set-in sleeve cardigans, and I I just really like the detail of the colours on the cuffs and the button bands, and if I get my hair out of the way you can see colour on the shoulders as well. It's just really clever and cute, and I thought it was something that I would be able to get a lot of wear out of. It's a bit playful, but it's still kind of sensible and goes with lots of things. So it's one of those projects that I just saw it and I had to drop everything and cast it on straight away. So I did, and I knitted my version with Blacker Yarn's Mohair Blends, which has to be one of my all-time favourite yarns. It's a blend of 50% mohair and 50% wool. The wool is either Hebridean or Manx, which incidentally is the same two breeds that I'm knitting with on this jumper. And it's just, you know, the range of colours, the way that mohair takes dyes is really kind of luminous and bright, but that's kind of toned down by the natural brown shades of the wool, so you get these really interesting colours that are both bright and subtle at the same time, and I really love them. So I knew that that was going to be the yarn that I wanted to use for this project, and luckily Blacker Yarn's 4-ply comes up a little bit on the heavy side, and the recommended yarn for this project is a sport weight, so I didn't struggle too much to get the right gauge with this yarn, even though it's called a 4-ply. And yeah, I really am pleased with this cardigan. So the colours that I chose are Trenaran, which is the dark blue, and the pink and the purple on the colourwork parts are Blissland, which is the pink, and Roseworthy, which is the purple. So I'll talk a bit about some of the modifications I made to this cardigan. Because I like a deeper armhole, because I'm usually wearing 100 layers underneath any piece of knitwear, I both lengthened the armhole, and when I was doing these stripes on the shoulder, which you work with German short rows, I knitted the smallest size, and in my size the width of this shoulder band was very, very narrow, and I thought if I'm having these fun stripes on my shoulders, I want them to be seen a bit more, so I worked a few extra stripes over the shoulder as well. What that did was it caused me problems with the way the pattern was written, because it's written for you to pick up stitches around the armhole and knit the sleeve from the top down. Now, from what I've said already, you probably realise that that's not my favourite way to knit sleeves anyway. So instead of following the pattern for the sleeves, I drafted my own sleeve and sleeve cap, which I knitted from the bottom up and then set in with mattress stitch afterwards, which probably sounds like a roundabout way and an overcomplication to most people, but to me that was the simplest way to knit this cardigan, and I'm really pleased with it. It does go with everything as I hoped it would. Yeah. I've made a little bit of progress on my tweed skirt, but to be completely honest, I've spent most of my time on it dithering, and that's because when I pinned the pleats I got a bit worried about how heavy the fabric is. I mean, it could almost be a blanket on its own, the thickness of the fabric, and when I'm pleating it, it's going to triple thickness, so it's going to be quite bulky, and I was a bit worried about, I then have to tuck that inside the waistband, which is going to give 5, even 6 thicknesses of fabric to deal with. So there's going to be a lot of seam management to do. So I spent a lot of time thinking about whether pleating it is a good idea. I'm still undecided, by the way. But I'm going to give it a try, and that's because while I was dithering, I worked on the back piece and I sewed the 4 darts in the back. So they're just darts from the waistband down to make it curve nicely over my bottom. And I pressed them, and I was really quite pleased with how flat they lie, even though they've got the same triple thickness of fabric there as the pleats. So what I thought I would do is tack the pleats first and then press them, see how I am, see if I feel like it's too bulky. If it is, then I will just unpin them, cut the fabric down and sew a straight skirt with no pleats in the front. But I'm at least going to give it a go before I cut the fabric, because as you know, there's not much fabric here for me to play with. So I'm going to finish pinning these second. I've done one side of the pinning. I'm going to pin the second side of the pleats and then tack them and see what I think. A few people have asked in the comments to the first couple of episodes if I could share a little bit more about Jack, so I thought I'd take a couple of moments to introduce him to you a bit more. Particularly people were asking what breed he is, and I'm afraid I can't answer that question because our lovely little Jack is a rescue dog, so we don't really know his background. Although he's most definitely got Jack Russell in him in terms of character and energy. He's been with me for almost 3 years, but he is almost 8 years old, so he's a fine middle-aged gentleman. And we're really happy that he came to us, or we came to him. It's just a good match and a good fit for us. So we're really happy that he's part of the family. And if you want to catch up with us before the next episode, the best way is to follow me on Instagram. I'm Katie Greenbean. I have the same username on all social media, but Instagram is the only one that I seem to manage to be vaguely competent at, so that's the best place to find me. If not, I shall see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye. Now I'm catching catching this bit on camera for all those of you who've been saying how clever I am to be able to knit and podcast at the same time. I was just changing from plain stocking stitch to 2x2 ribbing for the bottom welt of my jumper, and I have miscounted the stitches. I have an extra purl stitch right at the beginning of my row, so I'm gonna tink back a little way and prove that knitting and talking at the same time doesn't always quite go to plan.